Here's a look at some of the chefs who gave some ridiculous excuses on MasterChef. From sneaking in a dish that wasn't even made by the one who presented it, to ignoring the judges altogether.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me.
So, in episode 6, things started to spiral right from the start of the elimination challenge. The contestants were tasked with replicating the signature dishes of 2 past winners, but who were they?
Last year's winner, Luca. First ever MasterChef Junior winner, Alexander.
Luca, the winner of season 4, and Alexander, the first ever MasterChef Junior. I love that show, but it's a lot harder to make fun of than the OG. Luca presented his classic veal dish.
This is my pancetta wrapped veal with grana padano and sage, served with radicchio, apples, and finished with a very classic white wine sauce.
While Alexander whipped up a delightful panna cotta.
Passion fruit panna cotta with a juniper berry raspberry coulis, candied hazelnuts, and a lavender crumble.
At just 14 years old, Alexander had made a top-tier restaurant-worthy dish. I mean, this little guy deserved every bit of the MasterChef Junior title that he earned. But now, let's get back to the challenge. A few of the contestants would have to replicate Luca's savory dish, while the others would have to go with Andrew's sweet dish. And Elizabeth was pulling the strings.
My basic strategy is assign the panna cotta who don't have the finesse and pull it off, assign the veal to people who have weaker palates.
Now, on the surface, Alexander's dessert may come across as easier to make, but there were also those who found it really challenging.
Alexander's dish, a panna cotta, cooked cream, but held together with gelatin. Very technical thing to be able to accomplish.
Jamie was down to the final steps for her panna cotta, and that's when things took a turn for the worst.
Somebody took a panna cotta off my tray.
Jamie could not understand if someone was trying to sabotage her or if it was just a genuine mistake. What do you think? Was there a cat burglar amongst them that night? Either way, poor Jamie had no idea about what was happening. But she did end up paying the price for it.
First panna cotta, it just puddles.
Yup, the 2 containers of panna cotta she was left with didn't exactly meet the mark. And since she didn't even have her hands on a third, it made it all the worse. She was so devastated. There was quite frankly no hope left for Jamie, and she dreaded what was about to come. Now, when it was time for the tasting, nobody should be shocked that things didn't go in her favor.
It is not set up on me. If I would have had a third one, maybe.
But when Graham tasted it, despite the dish's disappointing appearance, the flavors were surprisingly on point.
It's like a really good pudding, but the flavor's great.
Either way, embarrassment was written all over Jamie's face. Given the situation, the only way she could stand a chance was if someone screwed up way worse than her, which at this point was remotely impossible. But look who stepped up for the tasting next.
Tyler, please, let's go.
3 blindfolds, please.
Chef Ramsay knew exactly what was going on, but he wanted to hear it from Tyler first.
Is there anything you want to tell me about this dish?
I had a, jackknife powerbomb the ramekin on the plate just to get it out of there.
Wait, does this dish look familiar to you? Look, it's not exactly like 2 contestants never failed in making a given dish on the show, but to make the exact same mistakes? Now, that could only mean one thing. And Chef Ramsay was ready to expose the truth.
Someone has brought us a dish that they did not cook.
But Tyler tried to put an act up. He looked shocked at the allegation Chef Ramsay was making.
What do you mean, Chef?
Stay there.
I mean, come on, Tyler, face it. You know exactly what he meant. But Chef Ramsay wasn't about to let the matter slide. Oh, no. Like, what he had done was seriously low. And as the famous chef started marching to the back of the kitchen, Tyler started to freak out. The tension was as real as it could get.
I'm getting pretty nervous. My heart's beating as fast as it can beat. Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me.
And then came the major reveal. Chef Ramsay headed straight to the chillers, pulled out another tray, and walked right back to the front. Now, he only had one question for Tyler, and he expected a no-nonsense answer from him.
What do you see on that tray, young man?
My ramekins.
Your ramekins?
Yes, Chef.
But Tyler decided to try and worm his way out of trouble.
I put my ramekins on the top shelf. I don't know if they got switched. I don't know, Chef.
And the famous chef was having none of it.
You didn't. They're on the bottom shelf, bottom left-hand side.
You put 4 ramekins in the blast chiller. I just pulled out the same 4.
With that, Ramsay went ahead and revealed what had happened.
You served us Jamie's panna cotta.
Oh, damn, that's more like Hell's Kitchen behavior than MasterChef. Although Chef Ramsay for some reason decided to cut him some slack, I honestly believe it was a deliberate and desperate attempt to get ahead in the game. And the only reason he got caught in the act is because he stole from one contestant who screwed up the worst that night.
I think you panicked. I think you ran in there with seconds to go and grabbed somebody else's dish.
Tyler was caught red-handed, and apologizing was the only way out for him.
I had no clue. I apologize.
The final judgment came down to what the other two judges thought about the dish. Jamie's dish to be precise. And well, Joe was pretty straightforward with his decision and refused to taste something that Tyler hadn't made.
It would be disrespectful to every other contestant who played by the rules.
Although Chef Ramsay believed that it was a mistake, let's not forget that rules are rules. After some deliberation, the judges were ready with their final decision.
Tyler, I am so sorry, but your journey is going to end tonight.
And Tyler's response?
I understand your decision, and I appreciate everything you guys have allowed me to do.
He bowed out of the competition, respecting the judge's decision and dropping another apology for good measure. But guess whose response totally won my heart? Jamie's.
No, I'm sorry that you grabbed mine.
Such a sweetheart she is, huh? Anyway, you can't deny that it was one of the most embarrassing eliminations that's ever been seen on the show. But hey, Tyler wasn't the only one Chef Ramsay taught a lesson to in his day. Now, let me walk you over to what happened in episode 1 of season 9 when contestants were fighting for their apron in the auditions. And this is when we were introduced to Mark.
These people might be a little older, but they can't cook like me.
My name is Mark, and I am a dishwasher.
The confidence. Working as a dishwasher in his mother's restaurant in Maine, Mark was here to prove his worth. And for someone as young as him, the dude was beaming with confidence.
Growing up in a restaurant at such a young age really did steep me in the culture and the respect it takes to succeed in the kitchen.
But look, there is a clear difference between being confident and being overconfident, and this dude definitely didn't fall in the right category. Mark believed that he'd nail every dish in the competition, but he had no idea what was in store for him. When he was preparing his signature dish to impress the judges, Chef Ramsay happened to ask him a genuine question. Why didn't he go to culinary school? And Mark's answer kind of showcased the true extent of his arrogance.
I find that I've learned enough in my own field, personally, independently, and just as well through my own experience.
Yeah, this dude had no idea what it meant to be humble. I mean, I kinda sensed he was cocky from his earlier interactions, but this was on a whole new level. And Chef Ramsay's simple wow was enough to tell us exactly what he thought of the guy. But here's the thing. He wasn't just overbearing, he was deluded.
I'm one of the more talented people in this room.
And guess who vibed with his over-the-top confidence?
Even at 19 years old, you feel you're above the class.
Absolutely.
Anyway, despite all the boasting, his dish was nowhere near perfect or even fairly decent.
Visually, what do you think?
I like how it looks.
You're full of
The famous chef was all set to burst his little bubble.
You know and I know, but that's undercooked.
His lamb was grossly undercooked, and the fact that he tried to pass it off by saying it was decent really got on Chef Ramsay's nerves.
Man up a little bit. Got me?
Absolutely.
That must have hurt his ego real bad. But it wasn't just about the lamb. Even his cauliflower puree was more butter than cauliflower. And even for an old school chef like Chef Ramsay, it was way too much for him. And when Joe stepped up to the plate, he didn't have anything good to say either.
You got a lot of swagger behind the bench. You cook like a kid who's been in a restaurant. All the swagger and technique has to translate into a dish.
Joe threw shade at Mark's attitude and asked him to back his skills with a little more technique. And where would he learn that technique from?
You know where you learned that technique? Exactly the place you said you didn't need to go. Culinary school.
The burn, I tell you. I bet Mark regretted ditching culinary school now. Meanwhile, Chef Aaron chimed in by saying that the dish lacked imagination and was overall just plain disappointing. With that, it was now time to hand out the apron, and well, Mark obviously missed the mark by more than a mile. And you can say that his reaction kinda gave away his immaturity. While the famous chef asked him to hone his skills and come back the next year, Joe had an entirely different suggestion.
Mark, hold on a second.
You see, Joe recognized potential in Mark and offered to invest in him, but he had one condition.
You would have to take direction and listen to me as you compete to win. And if you broke that deal, the consequences would be severe.
And what do you know? Mark readily accepted the offer and earned himself a white apron. Now, I'll definitely be going over Mark's journey on the show and reveal whether or not he really lived up to Joe's expectations in some of my upcoming videos, but for now, here comes another Mark from Season 8 who became the target of Chef Ramsay's undying fury. So, in episode 3, during the Mystery Box Challenge, yet another contestant seemed to be bursting with confidence.
I feel incredibly ready to win this whole thing.
The whole competition.
I didn't come here to lose.
Let's see if it was well-founded. Meet Mark Togney, arguably one of the worst cooks of that season. However, things didn't go as planned when Chef Ramsay singled out the contestants whose dishes stood out the most.
Sam, Heather, Mark,
Head on up here, let's go.
Mark was left speechless. His joy was through the roof. Nevertheless, Chef Ramsay then made a crazy revelation.
Mark, Heather, and Sam, you three stood out for all the wrong reasons.
Yup, the judges were seriously let down by the subpar performance of the bottom 3 contestants, being Mark, Sam, and Heather. But things were about to take a turn for the worst. When it was time to taste Mark's dish, Chef Christina laid it all out by giving a brutally honest opinion.
The pancake, it has problems. It's undercooked.
But wait, there's more.
Stuck on the plate is like the finesse isn't there. The hash brown, it almost looks like a piece of meat.
Everything about the dish seemed to be way off. Especially my all-time favorite, the hash brown. I mean, come on, all that confidence earlier and this is what you came up with? However, instead of just owning up to his mistake, Mark thought that making excuses would be the best way out.
I feel like it was the 4th quarter with 2 minutes left and I ran onto the field without my helmet or my jock strap.
But Chef Ramsay had little patience for excuses, especially those infused with football jargon. In fact, Chef Christina also found the dish utterly disappointing. Knowing Mike's potential, she recalled the impressive ravioli that earned him an apron. And somehow, he found it necessary to resort to dropping some convoluted football terminology in his defense. Either way, Mike eventually found himself in the elimination test. And instead of working towards regaining the judge's confidence, he decided to take his sweet time getting things done.
I've been in this position in my life before. Pressure is my middle name.
When Chef Christina walked over to him for an update, at first, he claimed to be working on a redo of his pancakes with chocolate chips and baked eggs on the side. But then, he said something that left her completely confused.
If you don't execute the basic play first, then why you to try the flea flicker?
Back to the football analogies. This guy was a caricature of sports, bro. I mean, can someone please remind him that he wasn't on a football field but in the MasterChef kitchen? Because just take a look at the pace he was working at. Chef Christina was legitimately concerned for him.
Looks like Mark doesn't care.
I might want to switch up here.
Yeah, she kinda had his attitude all figured out. But the famous chef was about to experience it firsthand. At the 10-minute mark, when Chef Ramsay decided to share a word of wisdom with Heather, Mike made a comment that pissed Chef Ramsay the hell off.
You know what you could do, Heather? Just do what I do and ignore them.
I mean, who does this guy think he is? The famous chef had had enough with the guy, and he decided to confront him once and for all.
Is this a joke for you?
No.
Is this just a big show off for your mates?
No.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
And believe me, it wasn't a mere threat, it was an ultimatum. And with just 2 minutes left on the clock, Mark wasn't getting any more respectful.
Mark, you've still got 1 minute. Mark.
I'm working on it.
The audacity of this man surprises me even after I've watched these clips hundreds of times after putting this video together. Now, fast forward to the tasting, and Mark was so incredibly confident about his dish. But the famous chef wasn't anywhere near matching his energy.
That is tough to look at.
And when Chef Ramsay asked him if that was the best that he could do, guess what he had to say?
Yes. I successfully completed the 28 sweep, and I think I scored a touchdown.
Even he thought he was being a douche, and you know what? I couldn't agree more. Meanwhile, the famous chef wondered if Mark really had the passion and hunger to reach the top of the competition. As for Christina, well, considering she all but babied him every step of the way, seeing him fail like this was just not fun for her.
And then that bacon you put in uncooked. Why not sear the bacon off beforehand?
Although she found that the pancake was cooked properly, there was a looming question that bothered her.
Really just a matter of whether a chocolate chip pancake and baked eggs is worthy of this competition.
With a dish like that and an attitude to match, one thing was sealed: Mark's fate in the competition.
Sam and Heather, make your way to the balcony.
He had it coming. Mark was then eliminated for failing to improve on his previous dish, and more so for his disrespectful attitude throughout the entire challenge. But this next contestant can rival Mark when it comes to being a smartass. Yep, I'm talking about Jeff from Season 8, and boy was he a handful. I mean, he's one of those contestants who mess with not just his competitors, but also the judges. Now, I gotta highlight this elimination challenge specifically when things started to get a little heated. This time, the judges threw an unusual curveball, where the contestants would not be performing solo.
All of these home cooks right here are going to be competing in teams of 2.
Jason decides who will be paired up for tonight's challenge.
That's right, teams of 2. Which means it all came down to communication, collaboration, and self-control. Now, having won the Mystery Box Challenge, Bowen was tasked with picking the pairs. And guess who ended up with Jeff?
Jeff's kind of roar will swallow up this person's voice. Caitlin, I pair you with Jeff.
Yeah, it was just a disaster waiting to happen. So, for the elimination test, the contestants were tasked with preparing an amazing Mexican platter.
We have some homemade tortilla chips with the wonderful pico de gallo. Right next to that, we have the spot prawn ceviche with avocado and shaved radish.
If this test wasn't already hard enough, Chef Christina then dropped a bomb that shook things up even further.
You're not going to be cooking together at the same time. One of you starts cooking, and your partner must stand at the end of your station.
And nope, she didn't stop there.
When we shout, switch, you will trade position.
Believe me, the pressure was insane. Because one of the pairs started to crumble like no other.
Searing the meat first, though.
Yep, exactly.
Yup, Jeff and Caitlin were struggling to get grips with the situation. Although they were off to a great start, soon they started to face challenges they never even imagined about.
The chips done and out of the way.
I make tortilla chips all the time. We don't need that right now.
Looks like someone's going through some major power dynamic issues. If you ask me, I think Jeff was just throwing unnecessary dominance into the mix in an attempt to control Caitlin's every move. Well, can someone please introduce him to the concept of teamwork, please? I mean, things got so obvious that even Chef Ramsay was quick to notice the growing power struggle.
Look at how controlling Jeff is.
Like, why am I even surprised? Now, don't forget that this was the same guy who didn't shy away from arguing with the Gordon Ramsay at every chance that he got. So, of course he was gonna try to assert his dominance wherever, whenever, and to whoever he could, right? Chef Christina had a different take on the matter though. According to her, Caitlin just wasn't strong enough to stand her ground, and well, in a way, both of them were at fault. One for being too submissive, and the other for being overly assertive. Interesting take, but she's not wrong. Because you can't deny that it was just painful to watch Jeff trying to be the boss. Especially when he didn't even command that kind of respect in the first place.
For the pico de gallo?
I can do this part.
Jeff completely ignored Caitlin's presence and went ahead on his own. In his desperate attempt to have everything come out perfectly, he forgot the main goal of the challenge. Yup, there's the whole notion of teamwork again. Strange how it keeps coming up, huh? Chef Aaron even came up to their station and told Caitlin that they needed to communicate better in order to work things out. But even then, Jeff's attitude towards Caitlin continued to be as cold as ice.
Those aromatics thing, you need to season that again for the vegetables.
I am going to, and I know what we have to do.
Correction, he was downright rude. Anyway, when it was time to present their dish, Jeff wanted something to be made known to the judges.
I took a leading role with this entire tag team challenge. Caitlin didn't bring a lot to the table.
My guy, it's because you didn't even let her. What's more, according to him, they failed to get the small details right, but everything else was on point. But Jeff's opinion didn't really matter, least of all here. First things first, Chef Ramsay made it clear that their inability to communicate and work things through as a team was frustrating to watch. And to make things worse, when he asked what they'd rate their platter, while Caitlin said a 3 or 4 at best, Jeff's answer went in a completely different direction.
I beg to differ. I would have actually gone a little bit higher. I would have gone a 7 because everything is there.
At this point, Chef Ramsay was so upset with him.
Because everything's there, it doesn't mean that this is on a 7. I am not going to accept that.
In fact, the famous chef was beyond disappointed.
Let's go to the churros. 7 is not. Let's get that right.
He decimated their platter, saying that the lamb looked like dog food, he wouldn't even bother looking at the tacos, and 4 of their churros would equal 1 actual churro. But that's not all.
I was working as fast as I can to shred it with 2 forks and...
I think that about says it all. To add insult to injury, Ramsay said that the only thing that he loved was the china that they served the food on. The one thing that they had absolutely zero part in making. Anyway, when it was time to decide who went home, the result was pretty obvious. No, it wasn't Jeff, it was Caitlin, for letting Jeff walk all over her. As Caitlin left with her head low, she brought a lesson well learned with her. In MasterChef, there was no space for contestants who can't take charge and speak up for themselves. Now, here's your turn to weigh in. Could you think of more times when chefs made stupid mistakes? Well, make sure to drop your thoughts in the comment section down below. When it comes to Joe, he and the trash are old friends. But there have also been a bunch of dishes that have left him speechless.
Wow.
Just like this time, when one contestant brought a whole new twist to the table. Now, get this, if you're gonna take part in a cooking competition, you should know that it takes more than just skill to impress the judges. It takes heart, creativity, and a magic touch to make an impression. And guess what? This contestant right here had it all. Yes, I'm talking about Sue, a food blogger from Houston who was featured in season 11. But here's the thing, Sue wasn't just a regular blogger. She was a passionate food lover with roots in Burma, a place where every meal tells a story of resilience and gratitude.
Just like home, with a lot more cheering people.
So when it was time to present her signature dish, she decided to present a tantalizing Burmese noodle soup with shrimp and coconut curry as a tribute to her homeland. When Chef Sanchez and Joe walked in to check over her station, Joe was already all in for Sue's dish.
That looks amazing.
Well, I think we've already got ourselves our winner. And no, it didn't stop and start at the dish, it was the passion for her country that won our hearts.
I come from a third world country. We have to eat so that we can survive. So we are already grateful to have a bowl of rice every day where I came from.
Sue was brimming with determination to bring some of the most exotic dishes to MasterChef, and the judges were soon to see that.
Shall we taste?
As the judges dug into Sue's creation, the room filled with anticipation.
I have a thing
Yes,
that
Chef.
I say,
Yes, Chef.
not to too many people, which is food of love.
And well, there was more appreciation yet to come her way.
And this here, Sue,
Yes, Chef.
is food of love. Well done.
Thank you very much, Chef. I'm very humbled.
That must have been one of the biggest compliments anyone who calls himself a chef can receive. Even Sanchez couldn't help but praise her creation.
That is truly something special.
It means a lot to me, Chef.
Now, when it came to Joe, one thing was clear. He was already sold. I made that much clear earlier. But when he actually started talking, there was no room for doubt.
A profound immersion into Burmese cuisine.
Thank you very much, Joe.
This dish undoubtedly stood out as a true masterpiece, transcending cultural boundaries with its exceptional taste and execution. As for Chef Ramsay, well, he was just plain wholesome.
It's the best dish I've tasted all night.
As the praise poured in, Sue found herself standing there totally blown away, her eyes sparkling with joy and gratitude. Suddenly, it hit her. Her cooking wasn't just about making good food. Well, it was about touching people's hearts and taste buds alike. And man, did she leave an impression. So when it came to handing out that apron, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that it belonged to Sue.
Congratulations. Come over, please, young lady.
Thank you very much.
But hold on, turns out Joe and the judges were itching for her to leave, but maybe not for the reason you'd instinctively expect.
And go away so we can finish eating the rest of the
Yes,
dish.
Chef. Yes.
If someone were to dismiss me for such a trivial reason, I'd be absolutely thrilled. It was quite evident that Joe was thoroughly enjoying himself, which came as a complete shock considering his usual, well, everything. Attitude, taste, you name it. Sue's mastery of one exceptional dish was enough to solidify her standing in the competition. But hey, she wasn't the only one that managed to impress the unimpressible Joe, because this contestant from season 13 left him speechless.
I'm Purvi from East Windsor, New Jersey. My specialty is American and Indian fusion cooking.
I'm talking about Purvi, a culinary enthusiast known for infusing Indian flavors into her dishes. In episode 1, she was all set to bring her A-game in hopes of snatching an apron.
Indian community in New Jersey is really big. I feel so proud to represent them. I'm making bundt cake with Indian flavors.
The pressure on her shoulders was something else, man. I mean, not only did she have to impress the judges to make it onto MasterChef, but she also had the weight of everyone from India counting on her success. Talk about a heavy load. And then her dessert, the vanilla bundt cakes with all the amazing Indian spices mixed in. Could it be the golden ticket that could lead her to success in the competition?
I've been doing this for the last 21 years. I can do this in my sleep.
Alright, so when it came to the judges' verdict, they were totally hooked in from the start, seriously intrigued by what she had whipped up.
Wow.
I love it. It reminds me of like an Indian festival wedding when there's just color
Yeah, thank
and
you
there's
so
vibrance
much.
everywhere.
It looks stunning. I'm dying to get in there.
When a dish looks as beautiful and vibrant as hers, I'd expect nothing less. I mean, if it were me, I'd never dig in. Because just look at that. I'd honestly feel so bad ruining such a work of art. And the judges thought so too.
Oh, look how moist it is.
Joe, who usually takes his sweet time to give a verdict, was the first one to take a crack at describing what was in front of him.
Yeah, really good. I just got back from India. The most incredible flavors gives me a new appreciation of tasting your dish.
You know what? That dish was seriously off the charts, like mind-blowingly good. He was so absolutely floored by how delicious it was that he didn't even bother waiting for the rest of the gang to chime in with their thoughts before throwing his vote into the ring. It was like he couldn't contain his excitement and just had to let everyone know how awesome it was right then and there.
It's a yes for me. I really liked it.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Now, I don't know how often you've seen him make a vote like that, but for me, it's a rare sight for sure. As for the other judges, they obviously shared the same excitement that Joe did.
This bite, it is so moist and fluffy.
Thank you
like it
so
has
much.
levity and balance.
Thank you so
Definite
much.
yes.
Hervey couldn't contain her joy when she saw how the judges thoroughly enjoyed her dish. She was overwhelmed by the impact her creation had made. Watching the judges savoring every bite felt like a victorious moment, one that she would remember for a long, long time. And let's be real, this vote was probably the easiest decision ever made in the history of MasterChef. Like, no contest, right? But Sanchez, you know, he totally tried to spice things up right in the middle of everything. Like, seriously, talk about drama.
I'm not gonna say yes just yet, okay? So I have to think about this for a little bit.
However, let's be real here, it was pretty obvious he was just trying to grab some attention yet again. I mean, come on, a little while later, he caved in and gave up. Classic move, am I right?
All right. For me, it's an absolute yes.
Yeah, he couldn't wait any longer. As for Chef Ramsay, well, he decided to dive right in at the first given opportunity.
It's a resounding yes.
Thank you so much.
That's 4 yeses.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
In the end, with a resounding yes from each judge, Purvi's dish became the highlight of the night. But it was Joe's unexpected response that steals the show. Now, you have to agree, this dish set a standard, especially in Joe's eyes. And this next contestant came in close competition. In the high-stakes kitchen of MasterChef, one single misstep can lead to a disaster. But sometimes, amidst all the pressure, contestants manage to leave even the most seasoned judges stunned. Just like this time when Kenny, a 46-year-old Boston native, blew the judges' minds.
I've always wanted to give people the great food that I give my family. This is my opportunity to do that.
You see, Kenny may be from Boston, but his roots, now that was something both him and Joe had in common.
I had great-grandparents that came from Naples and Sicily, so I had influences from all the regions of Italy.
But let's see if that actually works in his favor, cause, you know, it may only serve to give Joe an excuse to judge him even harder. So what happened is, when Sanchez and Joe walked in to check in on him, Joe was quick to notice this odd connection.
What's your name? My name's Kenny Palazzolo.
No doubt that you're from Boston.
I am definitely from Little Italy in the north end of Boston.
I mean, given the circumstances, his reaction was pretty normal. The connection to someone from the same country as you in a foreign land is just something else. As for the dish, it wouldn't take a genius to guess what Kenny was preparing.
A New York strip, braciole, salt and buca, stuffed with prosciutto and cheese.
Well, isn't it just so fitting that Kenny went with an Italian classic like New York strip braciole? I mean, he was all for embracing his roots, paying homage to his family's culinary legacy. But get this, it wasn't just about the dish itself. Nah, it was something totally different that really showcased his heritage in a whole new light.
What do you say? What kind of Italian do you speak?
I speak North End Italian.
Man, let me tell you, I saw it from a mile away that Joe would jump on the accent bandwagon. And guess what? When the moment of truth arrived and everyone was presenting their dishes, Kenny not only managed to win Joe over with his cooking skills, but also captured his heart in the process. It was like a double win for Kenny, leaving Joe absolutely smitten.
I brought you a New York strip, braciole, salt and buca, on a bed of vegetable risotto.
No doubt, the judges were blown away by just the plating of his dish.
Look at that presentation.
Visually, you've got it going on there, my man.
I did my best.
It looked visually stunning, but would it deliver on flavor? Now, this is where Joe really started to worry. He couldn't help but wonder if Kenny's dish would really live up to the hype.
The bresaola, not stewed in tomato sauce, it's basically a grilled stuffed steak. So this is an interpretation of what would be classic Italian.
The dish was an interpretation of classic Italian cuisine, and I don't have to tell you how important this was for Joe. As the judges took their first bite, anticipation hung in the air. And then it was time for the verdict.
That's wonderful.
You've defied the odds because I'm amazed you got that texture from a New York strip.
The judges were all here for the dish. And Kenny, well, let's just say his grin could light up the whole kitchen. But the judges realized that there was a tiny, tiny flaw.
It does need homework on that risotto.
I needed another 2 minutes.
The risotto may have needed a little bit more time, but it seems like Joe didn't care because if you replay the clip, you'll see how he was itching to go in for another bite. The dish was a hit in his books. Anyway, despite the minor flaw, the judges saw the potential Kenny had.
I can taste the passion. That's evident. For me, it is an absolute yes.
Kenny was able to create a dish that was near perfect within that given time frame, and this was proof of his impeccable skills.
It's really impressive. 100% yes for an apron for you.
As for Joe, he was willing to turn a blind eye to the minor flaw. Because, well, he was already impressed beyond measure. and maybe just a little biased. Maybe.
It's far from traditional, but it's well executed.
You see, the dish may not have been as traditional as he'd expected it to be, but he couldn't help but shower it with compliments.
And I think it's a really good interpretation of your personality into a tradition of Italian food.
Honestly, it was a pretty easy win for Kenny.
Benvenuto alla cucina di MasterChef.
Grazie, amico mio.
Prego, buona fortuna.
Grazie.
And believe me, he was more than grateful for having received the apron, specifically because it was handed down by Joe.
Joe Bastianich, to hear him say that he believed in me and handed me that apron, such a surreal moment in my life, I'll never forget it.
Well, this one dish propelled Kenny to being one of the top contestants on the show. But that's a story for another time, so let's move on. If you ask me, I think season 12 of MasterChef was in a whole different league, with contestants from the previous seasons coming together to fight for the win once again. And in this battle, if there's one guy who stole the spotlight with minimum effort, it definitely has to be Michael.
It takes hours or days to make the broth.
Alright, so here's the deal for this episode's challenge. The contestants had teamed up with Grubhub to upgrade some of the most popular delivery items in the country. The one who nailed the challenge gets a sweet immunity pin and a spot in the top 10 with Shanika and Bowen. So each contestant got to pick a random takeout bag with a dish they had to work with. And what did Michael get?
Ramen.
Oh. Ramen? Oh yeah, the guy definitely had his work cut out for him. But that's not all. To make the task a bit more challenging, the judges decided to drop another bomb.
You will have 45 minutes to cook us an upscale gourmet version of your chosen takeout dish.
With the stakes so high, you can imagine the kind of pressure each contestant must have been going through. But was Michael up for the challenge? Well, you be the judge. Here's a look at what he decided to make.
It is very hard to make ramen. It takes hours or days to make the broth. Trying to figure out how I'm gonna elevate it and put my twist on it.
Sounds interesting enough, right? But Michael had a good reason for picking this dish. Turns out, he had lived in Korea for a while, and so their cuisine was far from foreign to him. But guess what? This little life experience would eventually play to his advantage. As Michael confidently placed his dish in front of the judges, anticipation filled the air. But they were gonna have to taste it sooner or later, and that's exactly what they did. Joe took a cautious sip of the broth, and he was hit with an unexpected wave of heat. His reaction was priceless.
A little bit spicy.
Wow.
Maybe Michael should have dropped a spice warning or something, cause Joe definitely wasn't expecting that. It was clear that he wasn't exactly comfortable with all those Scovilles. And the camera ops were doing some serious work capturing his reaction right there. Joe struggled to find the right words to describe what he had just ingested. Whether because he genuinely couldn't think of something right away, or because the spice was preventing him from even putting a sentence together. But just as the tension reached its peak, the judges finally zeroed in on two dishes that stood out from the rest.
Michael.
So, was the bold flavor a risk worth taking? Let's find out now. Regardless of the initial shock that Joe had received, he was actually pretty impressed with the dish once his taste buds had recovered.
Everything looks super elevated.
As for the other judges, they chimed in with more appreciation.
The presentation is clever. You're using the crispy little rice noodles as a textural component. Looking forward to trying it.
And since one judge had already experienced the heat before anyone else dug in, Michael decided to warn them.
Of course, I like my ramen spicy.
Yeah, no kidding. But let's see if Chef Ramsay would be able to take the heat.
Dish is delicious. Love the take on that Korean influence, especially with the heat.
Hey, I'll give that a passing grade. As for Sanchez, he straight up said that the dish was award-winning, and a little bit of spice was never gonna faze him. If that wasn't enough, Joe had more to share.
I like the intensity of it. I don't know if you could eat a whole bowl of it, but all the components in the dish make sense. Very strong.
Well, sometimes taking risks can lead to greatness, and things luckily worked out in Michael's favor this time. Well, these contestants managed to leave Joe shocked with their delectable dishes, but there was this one contestant who left Joe dumbfounded for all the wrong reasons. But here's the real question. Are we gonna see another signature Joe dish thrashing? Go ahead and drop your guesses in the comments section down below. But for now, in Season 3, Episode 8, the tension was palpable as the contestants faced the day's dreaded elimination challenge. The challenge revolved around the judges' favorite desserts, and Felix sadly landed with the Herculean task of pleasing Joe.
My favorite dessert, tiramisu.
As the clock ticked down, the pressure mounted as Felix struggled to prepare a dish worthy of the judges' praise. When Joe decided to come check on her, he wasn't too happy about how things were going.
Well, you're not going to put it in a form? How are you going to make it?
On a plate, kind of more freeform.
Wow, that's risky.
Things weren't off to a great start. Regardless of Joe's concern, Felix was feeling confident.
Anyone can go home today, and you're in a competitive group.
I'm not going home today.
Well, we'll see about that. Anyway, with time running out, Felix was the first person to present her tiramisu to the judges. But even before she laid the dish before them, Joe happened to notice her expression.
Let's begin with tiramisu. Felix?
That was brutal. I mean, he sure didn't have any high hopes when it came to this particular dish. He was beyond disappointed.
You saw the standard, we put it up there, we asked you to execute it, and you come back with this. It's so disappointing.
And if that wasn't enough, he then dropped another brutal comment.
If it's bad, you will go home.
Hell yeah. There's no place for people who don't meet the standards on MasterChef. That's the one rule the judges have set. Either you follow or go home. And believe me, things weren't exactly looking up for Felix. But when Joe took a bite of her dish, he couldn't help but ask her one simple question.
Why did you put nuts in here?
I like mac nuts.
Macadamia nuts in an Italian tiramisu?
I mean, how could she not know that? But just as Graham decided to taste the dish, Felix was already tearing up.
I'm sorry, I have to eat this.
Well, it's not even eating it, it's looking at it.
Like, to see her come up with something like this was totally out of character. And his reaction was quite expected. He deemed the dish terrible. And when it came to Chef Ramsay, he didn't hold back either.
Way too sweet. Macadamia nuts, nothing. Looks as sad as you do, because it is a mess.
Well, it just looks like it wasn't her day. The tiramisu, if you can even call it that, was just a sad little puddle of mush. And well, according to the famous chef, this was Felix's worst performance on the show. If Chef Ramsay dropping that dire warning was any indication, Felix found himself in the bottom 3. Fortunately for him, Scott was the one who was sent home instead. Talk about dodging a bullet, whew.
To Scott. And get back to your station. Good luck, baby.
Alrighty, so in episode 7 of season 4, the last 16 home cooks met up at Pasadena City Hall in California. This time, they had to cook for a bunch of off-duty firefighters, real American heroes. Let's hope to God they don't screw it up. Now, their challenge was to whip up a 10-ounce New York strip steak from Walmart, and this wasn't just any meat. It was USDA certified, and only 1 in 5 steaks made the cut for being called Walmart Choice Premium Beef. But hold up, there's more. They also had to come up with this.
You'll need to make 2 side dishes using the fresh Walmart produce you see here, which includes carrots, bell peppers, zucchini, mushrooms, and asparagus.
And oh, don't forget a killer sauce for that steak. Blatant product placement aside, they had an hour and a half to cook up some mind-blowing dishes. And let me tell you, it wasn't your regular buffet. It was a full-on banquet with waiters treating these heroes like kings. However, in 90 minutes, one team would come out on top and the other would be dealing with a nasty pressure test. The red team was brainstorming and planning their menu together. But in the blue kitchen, Bethy took charge and made all the decisions.
I want you on the grill, you on the grill.
Bethy decided to whip up some potatoes with red peppers and throw in either chimichurri or a balsamic reduction sauce to pair with the steak. But hold up, they hadn't even settled on which sauce to go for. Just then, Chef Ramsay walked in to check on them, and what he saw blew his mind.
What's the sauce?
I'm gonna create 2 different sauces, a reduced balsamic sauce, and I'm gonna do a classic chimichurri.
You only want 1 sauce.
He was mad as hell. They were wasting time on ingredients making 2 sauces instead of focusing on 1. This is when Chef Ramsay called Bethy over, demanding an explanation.
What sauce are you serving?
I'm debating between 2 sauces.
Okay, so you don't know what you're doing. Unbelievable.
What a freaking waste. While Chef Ramsay was about to lose it, take a look at her attitude.
I promise you it's gonna be 1 stunning sauce.
Well, Bethy just couldn't care less and totally ignored his advice. Finally, Bethy promised to go with 1 sauce, and this is when I started to actually think she pulled through. But wait, hold up. Chef Ramsay spotted a massive problem on the blue team that could totally mess up their chances in the challenge. If you're wondering what it was, well, check this out.
You've got 101 firefighters coming in for lunch. There's not even a steak seared yet.
I mean, seriously? They hadn't even started yet? But the drama didn't stop there. Once the guests showed up, the blue team started serving up their dishes like pros, while the red team struggled like a bunch of amateurs. But here's the real kicker. The blue team made some ridiculous mistakes and sent out a plate without one of the most crucial ingredients.
You didn't get any of the chimichurri sauce. All right, hold on a second. Let me go get you some. Oh, thanks.
Could you believe it? They forgot to serve the damn sauce. Seeing this, Joe obviously lost his mind and gave the blue team a reality check to get their act together.
Come on! Move your ass and make another plate. Do I speaking English?
Eventually, the blue team was actually the first to finish the service, but that didn't guarantee anything. It was up to the firefighters to decide which team served the best dish. And guess what? With 68 out of the 101 votes, Bethy and her team totally crushed it. Hey, maybe Chef Ramsay was onto something about them needing to focus on a single sauce. Either way, after the rocky start they had, I never saw the blue team pulling off a win. What do you think though? Well, I think after a point, how you deal with pressure is all that matters. And if you agree, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on my post notifications. By the way, don't forget to visit all my social media pages to check out more amazing content from me. Anyway, speaking of chefs who messed up, there was one contestant who totally ignored Chef Ramsay's warning. And what followed next was chaos.
You've gone backwards.
So in episode 5 of season 2, Christian Collins, Susie Singh, and Jenny Kelly scored the top 3 best dishes. The final dish chosen was Jenny's masterpiece, savory salmon tart with caramelized fennel and shaved asparagus. The judges, including Joe, were throwing some good words her way.
The creamy ricotta underneath gives it that nice moist mouthfeel.
An uncommon Joe W right there. But really, who wouldn't be impressed about making something out of nothing, right? Anyway, after the judges deliberated, they declared Christian the winner of the challenge. Now, here's the kicker. He got the privilege to be the first contestant to raid the MasterChef pantry and pick the ingredient or style of food that everyone had to cook within the elimination test. But the theme for the test was still up to the judges.
Now, the theme of today's elimination test is the cuisine of Europe.
They laid it on Christian that the theme would be the cuisine of Europe, and he had to choose between Spanish, French, and British cuisine. And here's what Christian chose.
Vive la France!
But then, Chef Ramsay dropped some really good news for our guy here.
You don't have to cook anything. You are safe from elimination.
All he had to do now was watch the others sweat it out in the kitchen. Now, for the rest of the crew, it was crunch time. They had just 1 hour to flex their skills or risk getting the boot from MasterChef. While absolutely everyone was feeling the heat, let's focus in on Jenny.
Do you have any heavy cream I can borrow? This is all I love. Take that. Thank you!
Remember her from the mystery box top 3? Yeah, she was hoping to repeat her success. And this is where things got interesting. Now, Jenny decided on a trio of soups, cream of mushroom, French onion, and zucchini. But here's the thing, Chef Ramsay was getting real worried.
Why would you do 3 soups and not just one stunning soup?
When I've been to Paris, I love to go to bistros and see what the soup of the day is,
Yeah.
and these are 3 of my favorites.
Right.
I mean, makes sense, right? Why serve 3 decent soups when you can nail 1? But did Jenny exactly heed his advice? Nope, she went full steam ahead with her triple soup extravaganza. Now, how do you think that turned out? Was it a genius idea or a disaster? Well, you do know what the title of this video is, so let's see what Chef Ramsay has to say, I guess.
The onions aren't cooked properly. And also, you know, when you caramelize those onions, you finish them off with some mustard in there first, so it really brings the heat up.
Next in line was Joe, and at first, his reaction seemed pretty decent. But then the plot thickened, and his comments took a strange turn, bordering on disrespectful.
These really are not even soups, quite frankly. These are like purees. These are like baby food.
I mean, calling it baby food? Seriously? Poor Jenny must have felt like she hit rock bottom there. Jenny came this close to being eliminated, but thanks to her incredible performance in the Mystery Box Challenge, she managed to hold on to a little good faith. Just enough to keep her going for a little while longer. But here comes an instance where a dream team tore into each other, becoming each other's nightmares. Well, let me break it down for you. So, in the 10th episode of Season 9, the top 15 home chefs were paired for a new challenge.
And guess what? You can choose your own partners.
But of course, there was a twist. As it turns out, they could actually choose their partners. With chicken, carrots, onion, bacon, and cornmeal on the menu, they had just 45 minutes to whip up a dish. Plus, they could raid a fully stocked pantry for extra ingredients. Now, Ashley Mincy and Taylor Waltman ended up together, and they were pretty hyped up about it.
I know that having her as a partner is going to be stellar.
They brainstormed and nailed down exactly what they were gonna make with the ingredients. But this is where Chef Ramsay got really worried.
I think personally, they're too friendly. They might not want to say that tough thing to one another.
Or correct one another.
Exactly.
That's what I'm worried about.
You see, being friends can actually be a challenge. The famous chef figured they might not call each other out on their mistakes. But hey, it is a competition, so let's see how long that friendship would hold up. So what happened is, sometime later when Chef Ramsay checked on Ashley and Taylor, he straight up hated their dish.
Why are you doing things, testing them, they've never tasted before?
He called it ridiculous and couldn't even help wondering if Ashley was even thinking. And what was her comeback? Check this out.
Is it for visual or is it for flavor?
I've never done it before, Chef. I wanted to taste it first.
Seriously, in a competition? Chef Ramsay had to set her straight. But that's when something caught Chef Ramsay's eye that left him beyond shocked.
Who mauled this?
Both Ashley and Taylor were frozen. Finally, Ashley owned up to it, admitting that it was her fault. But that definitely wasn't enough to relieve Chef Ramsay's worries.
I twisted it out of the joint.
Do you know how to break down a chicken?
Yes, Chef.
He went off on them, and the tension escalated very quickly.
I've seen better performances than Junior MasterChef with 8-year-olds.
Okay, now let's fast forward to the judgment time.
Ashley and I were definitely not on the same page, and it is completely coming through on this plate.
Ashley and Taylor had dished up something fancy sounding: pan-seared chicken, sauteed carrots and bacon, and cornbread cake. And Chef Ramsay didn't pull any punches.
Why puree baby carrots? You could eat them freaking raw.
He straight up called them dysfunctional and messy.
Watching both of you work is like chewing gum with a mouthful of nuts.
And just like that, the blame game kicked off. They started arguing instead of owning up to their mistakes. At this point, Chef Ramsay was over and done with their nonsense.
Two smart, talented girls, and look at the result.
Now here comes the big question: did their dish taste good at all? Well, let's ask Chef Ramsay himself.
The cornbread is dry, it's crumbly, and out of all those carrots, that's what I've got. And they're bitter.
But in spite of it all, the blame game was still going strong.
I started to cut it, and then Ashley was like, don't cut it that way, so she cut right into it.
Oh my Lord.
Long story short, they were both mega embarrassed for letting Chef Ramsay down. As for the famous chef, well, he didn't take it well either.
But right now, with these two guys standing behind me like that, I look the biggest idiot in this kitchen.
Now, let's dive into the juicy drama Season 1, Episode 11 Served Up, where a surprise nobody saw coming dropped. So, in this episode, things went south for one home cook in particular. Everyone was so pumped up to dig into some delicious creations when Whitney decided to throw a curveball. She confidently served up a pan-seared sculpin with a little something extra. Curious about the twist? Drum roll, please!
I actually used the tomatoes out of the can.
Yeah, so Whitney spilled the beans, or should I say, the canned tomatoes. You could practically see the excitement draining off of their faces when that little revelation dropped. To make matters worse, none of them were even interested in tasting the dish anymore. And Whitney totally picked up on that vibe.
Thank you.
Well, you gotta hand it to her. Whether it was a bold move out of ignorance or just plain insanity, Whitney shook things up with those canned tomatoes. So, even though Ramsay gave the stink eye to canned stuff, Whitney threw caution to the wind and went for it. The critics, though, they were far from impressed. And it didn't start and stop at the tomatoes. The whole dish felt off.
The garlic is overpowering. I can't really taste the fish because there's so much garlic in my mouth.
Now, brace yourselves. Despite the critics giving her a reality check, Whitney was grinning ear to ear about what she had plated. But seriously, did she even taste it before loading it up with garlic and salt? Okay, now time to unveil the scores.
To face the pressure test with a score of 5 out of 12, that person is Whitney.
She barely scraped together 5 points. Yep, that's it. Looking back, the critics were almost too kind. I almost thought Chef Ramsay would kick her out right then and there. But that does not mean he let her off easy. He straight up called Whitney out on her decision.
Why tell the harshest critics anywhere in the world today
that you're serving them canned tomatoes.
But Whitney, she just stood there poker-faced. It was like trying to decode if she was handling it like a champ or if there was a whole storm brewing inside her head. Did she forget she was in the big leagues? Sure, she was upset, but even with Chef Ramsay breaking it down for her, it seemed like she missed the memo on what the actual problem was.
But anyway, no, I'm just gonna fight back because tomorrow I'm not going home.
However, there was still a silver lining. Whitney gained some overnight fans. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, she got back on her feet and kept going. If that isn't admirable, I don't know what is. But this next contestant made an unexpected mistake that got her disqualified. At just 21 years old in MasterChef Season 7, Andrea Gallen brought a burst of energy as the youngest contestant in the room. Despite her fiery personality wreaking havoc more than a few times, Andrea proved herself by winning multiple challenges, setting high expectations. So, during episode 10 in the 100 Farmers Challenge, Andrea landed on Diamond's red team, which unfortunately lost with just 20 votes out of 101. And the consequence was facing the dreaded pressure test. During the blue team's rescue mission, they saved Nathan, leaving Andrea and Terry in the danger zone. And this was the reason why they didn't save Andrea.
Andrea's going to go in and kill whatever we're doing right here. She's going to be in the top 10 regardless.
Confident in their abilities, the blue team believed that Andrea and Terry would secure spots in the top 10. However, after Nathan was saved, Andrea looked super annoyed.
The blue team is only saving Nathan because they know he's a weaker chef and that they can get him out later.
In the heat of the sausage challenge, Christina laid down the law.
You'll all have to grind and case your own sausage. Please, head to your station.
And that's not all. The contestants needed to have their sausages in a bun at the front table within 60 minutes. Andrea, guided by her culinary vision, crafted a bratwurst with beer butter caramelized onions and a currywurst ketchup on pretzel roll, aiming to represent her love for global flavors as a traveler. However, with less than a minute left, Andrea did this.
Andrea, move!
Yep, she threw a curveball by putting her sausage back in the pan. This prompted urgent pleas from the judges and even fellow contestant Tenoria to hustle. In the final 5 seconds, chaos ensued as Andrea struggled to make it to the front table, with everyone shouting at her to speed up.
Andrea, you've got to be down here!
Oh, I did not even...
After arriving a few seconds late, Andrea, visibly uncertain, admitted her mistake.
I was so focused on getting my sausage in a bun perfect that I completely forgot to walk to the front.
Anyway, Andrea faced the judgment as the third contestant to present her sausage in a bun. Chef Ramsay inquired about her sausage recipe, and she revealed a mix of 1.5 pounds of pork shoulder, 1 pound of veal, and 0.5 pound of fat. And after tasting her dish, this is what he had to say.
Young lady, here, the sausage is still glistening. That is beautiful.
He noted the moistness of the dish and cut it into slices to showcase its glistening texture. Believe me, he was impressed by the glizzy. Chef Ramsay generously shared the slices with the other contestants, praising Andrea for her spot-on seasoning and commending her meat grinding skills. Eric and Terry joined the chorus of approval, labeling it as delicious. But that wasn't the end of it. What Chef Ramsay said next was one of the highest honors anybody's ever received on MasterChef.
I think that's going to be one in my book. Really good job.
Thank you, Chef.
Delicious.
Thank you.
Wow.
Wow, crazy. Imagine your creation being featured in Chef Ramsay's book. Brandy, who had earlier doubted Andrea's top 10 worthiness, conceded that not saving her only made her shine brighter. However, at the end of it all, it appeared Diamond might be on the chopping block, and here's why.
That's it. That's the end. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm going home.
But things got twisted. During the deliberation, it all came down to Andrea instead.
I don't think we could have made it any more clear.
Listen, she had the best sausage of the night, okay?
Christina stressed the importance of following the rules, but Chef Ramsay tried to defend Andrea, arguing that she had the best sausage. And when the judges finally returned, Chef Ramsay dropped some big news.
The person who is unfortunately going home tonight did not have the worst dish.
Guess who got the boot?
We were forced to watch the last 10 seconds and sadly did not adhere to that rule.
Chef Ramsay emphasized that rules unfortunately were rules, and Andrea's late arrival, as seen in the last 10 seconds of the challenge, sealed her fate. Andrea then became the second person in MasterChef history to be disqualified for failing to adhere to the time limit. What happened next was heartbreaking.
I am so sorry. Rules are rules, and we have to abide by them on a daily basis.
Chef Ramsay lamented that one of the most talented and inspiring young chefs wouldn't advance to the top 10. Andrea, in tears, admitted her mistake.
I messed up.
In a bittersweet farewell, Andrea received a montage of her journey. It emphasized that not being in the kitchen anymore didn't matter as much as knowing what she wanted to do and who she wanted to be. A poignant exit for a promising chef. But here comes an instance where one contestant's arrogance took the center stage. In Season 9, Episode 11, Mark practically blew the doors down with his arrogance, and you have to see why.
I've made it better over this way. It's faster, a double boiler takes too long.
You have plenty of time. Do you want to make it right?
The dude straight up brushed off Aaron's wisdom on crafting the perfect béarnaise sauce. Yeah, like he wasn't standing in front of one of the greatest chefs of our generation. Bad move, my friend, bad move. And just to add a little more spice to the mix, he defended his own speedy approach, claiming that there's no right way to do things. Even someone like Joe tried to drop some knowledge about the importance of technique, but Mark wasn't willing to hear him out either. However, Chef Ramsay's intervention was yet to come.
I'm going to stop you now. 10 years of doing this competition, I'm not going to be responsible for sending undercooked egg yolks.
The famous chef finally let loose, and boy did he have a lot on his mind. When he pointed out Mark's undercooked egg yolks, he made it crystal clear how disappointed he was. It was like the weight of the entire 10-year MasterChef legacy just dropped on Mark's shoulders. Hold on though, because the elimination test didn't go much better when Mark's attitude was thrown into the mix. Now brace yourselves.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, Mark, for whatever reason, decided to toss in some strawberries at the last minute. And apparently, he wasn't caught up on his physics homework because he didn't seem to anticipate at all that their water would leach out and flood the rest of the dish. But wait, there was way more chaos to come. Struggling with the ticking clock, Mark fumbled and failed to get all the cupcakes in the box. Now imagine how Chef Ramsay felt. Uh-oh.
I don't have all my cupcakes in the box.
Wow. Talk about making a bad situation worse. Mark thought that a bit of laughter would magically fix everything, but Chef Ramsay's disappointment was hovering above Mark's head. Even as Chef Ramsay laid down the critiques, Mark stood his ground, claiming that his confidence was being mistaken for arrogance.
The home cook leaving this kitchen, Mark.
In the end, Mark's departure was inevitable. The MasterChef kitchen just wasn't big enough for his ego. Now, could you think of more times when chefs messed up on MasterChef? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, don't forget to check out my latest video right here since it's even crazier.